Hi, this is Angela Clark with Threadwaggle Quilting, and today I want to talk to you about how to get designs that you've purchased into Quilt Path or Quilters Creative Touch. So we're going to start out by talking about a design real quick. So I'm going to go out to my website, and the design that is on the screen is one that I've created for us to go through this lesson. So if you haven't done so already, look in the description on this YouTube video and you're going to see the URL for this design. It's a free design out on my website. You want to download it so that you can walk through the steps with me. Once you've done that, if you're using Windows, you're going to want to use File Explorer to actually put the design onto your flash drives. So what we're going to do is go down to the bottom of your Windows to your start bar, and you're going to see a folder that looks like a file folder with a little blue symbol in front of it. If you tap on it, it's going to bring up File Explorer, sometimes called File Manager, and this is how we manipulate things in Windows and move things around. So what this is showing me right now is actually a folder that's on my D drive, but what I want it to show me is what I just downloaded. So if I tap on the Downloads folder, you're going to see that the last thing that I downloaded today, the very first thing on my list, is 15 wavylines.zip. This is the zip file from the website, right? So if you look at your downloads folder, you should also have a 15 wavylines.zip. If you are downloading on an operating system other than Windows, if you're using Mac or Chromebook or Linux, your file may be in a different location. All of them have something like File Manager or File Explorer, right? You just want to figure out where that tree system is on your operating system, and then you'll be able to pull the entire zip file onto a flash drive. Don't try to open it up if you're not on Windows. You can get some weird symbols before the file names if you do that, and it can cause Quilt Path some issues trying to actually use those files. But if you pull the whole zip file in, when I get to the point that we would be using it, I'll remind you to go in and unzip that file. Okay, so like I said, if you're not on Windows, just stop now, grab this file, pull it over to where you want it and drop it. If you're on Windows, we're going to actually go and look for our individual files. Okay, so now that we know where the file is, we're going to double tap on it. That's going to open up that zipped folder, and you're going to see the folder I actually zipped, which was 15 wavy lines. And if you double tap on that, you'll see all of your files that are together inside of that folder. So Windows will let you open a zip folder without having to unzip it or extract it. So what we're going to do is just open it up, grab the files that we want, and put them on a drive, and then we never have to deal with this extract all up at the top of the screen. There are times when you're unzipping files that you may need to do that, but we just need to grab the files quick. So what we're going to do is I am going to insert a flash drive. So what I want to show you on this left-hand side is that the highest letter I have is G. And as soon as I insert the flash drive, I'm going to have a Kingston H on here as well. So this is the flash drive that I just inserted. You're also probably going to get a little pop-up screen here on the right. Just close it if it comes up. It's asking what you want to do historically with flash drives from now on when you insert them. It doesn't matter. I just ignore it and close it. And I'm going to use this flash drive I have that I've saved other things on as well, just to put the files on that I'm going to need to move right now. So what I'm going to look for in this long list of files is the ones that have GPF behind them. So think of that as Grace Product File. Both Quilt Path and Quilters Creative Touch use GPF files. So if the zip file has those in there, all you have to do is copy those over. So the way you would do that is you would tap on one, depress the Control key on your keyboard, tap on the second one, and then you can let go of your Control key and it'll let you move both the files. You'll see it has a number 2 on my little piece of paper that it's copying. And when I drag it over and I highlight Kingston H on the left and let go with my mouse, it's going to copy those two that I just pulled over. If I tap on my Kingston H, you're going to see here's 15 wavy lines and 15, that's the GPF, and then that GPF bitmap are both there. You do need both the GPF and the GPF bitmap. So it's actually two files that you need for Quilt Path. I'm going to go back into where we were real quick and show you again GPF, GPF bitmap. So if you only have one GPF in your system, even if you can't see the file type, because sometimes it looks a little different when you come in here, if you can see a file size and it looks larger than 1 KB, you want the GPF that's larger than 1 KB, okay? If your only GPF in your file that you're looking at is only 1 KB, I can almost guarantee you it's a bitmap. Quilt Path can open the file if it has the main GPF. It cannot open a file if it only has a bitmap. Okay, so I know that's a little bit confusing, but you're going to see files every once in a while that are downloaded off a website where they missed getting both of the GPFs out. Try pulling the one over. And if for some reason it doesn't work, then you would need to pull another file type over. And if I only had one GPF in there, I would actually pull the GPF and like the CQP at the same time. So that when I got to my surface, right, if the GPF didn't work, I could immediately import the CQP and just go merrily on my way. So let's talk about what to do if there's no GPFs in there. If there's no GPFs at all, my first choice is always CQP. That's a CompuQuilter file. They seem to convert very, very well. I've never had an issue with one. So that's always my first choice. And then if I don't see a CQP, it is an older file type. CompuQuilter is no longer being produced, so people they also have designers that are not putting them in their file type, their folders anymore, right? Because it's a computerized system that's not being used by very many people anymore. So if you don't see CQP, I would then look for a DXF file. That is a digital exchange file. So that would be produced somewhere like Adobe Acrobat. Okay. And then there's HQF is another good choice. That is for Handy Quilter. And then as a very last choice, I'm going to try everything else in here before I get down to a QLI file. I don't normally have an issue with the way it wants to quilt things that come in from QLIs, but I do have an issue where I am seeing QLIs come in much, much larger than other file types. So when I bring this into Quilt Path and I save it as a QLI, or I bring my QLI in and I save it as a GPF, my GPF from the QLI file will be like twice as big as my CQP file, and sometimes a lot bigger than that. And when that happens and you've got this big file that has all this extra data in it, it causes Quilt Path to work slower. So the real reason that I am avoiding QLIs is that I don't want my system to work slow. Okay? It's not going to hurt my system. It's just going to slow it down. I can train you guys up front to use it as the last option instead of the first option. You're going to be much happier with the processing speeds inside of Quilt Path. Okay? So I'm also going to grab the CQP file real quick and drop it onto my flash drive as well. So that I can show you how to bring in a GPF file, how to bring in a file that's not a GPF, right? And then I also have another file on here that is both in the GPF and the CQP format, so I can show you how to bring in multiples at one time. Okay, so what I want you to do is get that far, actually get the information onto your flash drive, and then we're going to go into Quilt Path. When I get into Quilt Path, I would be at my surface now, right? Actually on the tablet, on my system, ready to bring this file into the surface so that I can then quilt. So I would insert my USB again, and then I would bring Quilt Path up, and I would go to Pattern CAD. The reason that I go to Pattern CAD It's your digitizing software. So you can see if something's wrong immediately. You can actually fix things too if you need to. So I have just always brought it up in Pattern CAD. It makes sense to me. You can bring things up in other parts of the program, but if there's a problem, you would still need to go into Pattern CAD to fix it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Select Pattern. As long as you are in version 4 or higher, and you're doing a single file, you just go to Select Pattern. Okay, so I'm going to go to Select Pattern. I'm going to go to New Drive, and we know that on my system, this is my H drive. But on your system, on your Surface, it's probably going to be your D drive. My computer has lots of hard drives on it because we use it for lots of different things, right? But my Surface, I only have a C, the main C drive, and then all of my flash drives typically will come up as my D drive, okay? So just know that you're clicking on D, but I need to click on H because that's my thumb drive, okay? And then you're going to see the files that are on my H drive. In this case, there are 2 GPF files. You can see them, right? And you can see the little pictures on them. So it looks like a normal Quilt Path file. And if I wanted to use this, right, I could just click on it and say open, and it would open like a normal Quilt Path file. If I take my nodes off here over on the left, you can actually see the wavy lines going back and forth. So it's ready to use. I do normally go ahead and click on optimize real quick and make sure that there's only one segment and there's no jump stitches. I mean, this was created in Quilt Path, saved in Quilt Path as a GPF, so it should open up and look right when it does the first time, which it does. So this is what we would expect of a file that was saved in Quilt Path. So the last part, if I've opened it, is I would want to save it, and you would want to save it somewhere that made sense to you. Typically, I suggest going into your continuous lines file. You are welcome to save it with all of your other designs if you want. I tend to create folders and then save to a folder. If you decide you want to do that, you can just go to New up here in the top right. That means New Folder, and then give your folder a name. Once you do that, it'll come up on your list, and you just double click on it, and then you would save it like I did this design, right? I would have to give it a name. I'm just going to name it 15 so that you can see that it would save this a second time when I go back in. Okay? So that's not hard at all. Now the other thing you can do, because it's a GPF and Quilt Path can see it, right? If I go back to that same file, let's say I want both the 15 lines, which is straight lines, and the 15 wavy lines, which are wavy, right? I want both of those designs to be moved into my continuous lines folder. I can do that here. I don't need to go out to File Explorer to do it. So I can actually tell it I want to select multiple designs. So I will tap the multi button, and then I can tap on the designs I want. So those are the 2 designs I would want. I can choose to copy or cut. If I want them to be deleted off of this drive, I can tell it to cut. If I want to keep them on the drive and have them on my hard drive, then I would hit copy. And then I would just need to go over to wherever I wanted it to copy to and hit paste. And you'll only see one design come in because it's smart enough to know that the 15 wavy lines is already there. But you can move designs around using Quilt Path. And the great thing about it is Quilt Path moves both of those GPF files for me. It knows about both of them. It knows it needs both of them, so it moves both files at once. So typically if I'm moving GPF files around, I will use the program to do that. And I'll just use Select Pattern to do it. It's really quick, and it's a great way to organize when you're trying to get designs into different folders quickly. Okay, so that's how you would deal with a single GPF file or multiple GPF files. But let's talk about those CQP files. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to add a new folder in here real quick, and I'm going to call it import for just a second. And I'm doing that because I want to bring in 2 CQP files in a moment. So I want to have another folder that I can bring those into, just to make it make a little more sense in just a moment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to select file. It's going to tell me I'm going to lose my work, and I'm going to say yes, I want to continue. And then I need to go back to my H drive, right? And I'm going to grab the wavy lines CQP. And it's going to look the same when I bring it in, right? So this is, if I look at the top, it actually says 15 wavylines.cqp, so I know that it's looking at that file. I would want to optimize it to make sure that there was no problems. Anytime you're bringing in a different file type, there could be issues with how it's translated by the program. But in this case, there are no problems. And then it would be the same thing where I would just hit save and go to where I want to save it, give it a name, and save it, right? So that part of the process doesn't change. It can read different file types. When it does change is when you want to do the two CQPs at one time, because you can only bring in one at a time through select pattern, but you can bring in as many as you want if you go to plugins and you choose batch import. Batch import lets you bring in a lot of designs. They don't all have to be the same file type. It can be multiple file types, but it will bring in lots of designs at one time. So what I would do then is go back to my H drive, right? And you're going to see the 2 CQP files. You will not see any GPF files on the screen. And that can sometimes throw people off because they're expecting to see GPFs here as well, but GPFs don't need to be imported. Quilt Path already understands GPF. It speaks GPF. It's kind of like I speak English, but I can also speak German. I have to translate between the two. And my mind always thinks in English, right? Same idea. It can understand a CQP file, but it always thinks in GPF. Okay, so you've got to get it to that GPF so it understands what you're trying to tell it. So I'm going to hit multi down here on the bottom left, and I'm going to tap both of the files that I want to import. And then I'm just going to say, please import this. Hit the import button, and it's going to bring up a status window. It actually tells me both of my files were imported successfully. And then it tells me where the files are. Your imported patterns are in the patterns batch folder. You're going to say, okay, I don't need to import any more files, so I'm going to say no. And then I'm going to go back up to select pattern. And I'm going to go up to the patterns folder, right? Because it said it was in the patterns batch folder. So I'm going to patterns, and then here's the batch folder. And here are the 2 designs that I imported. And when you imported a design, it's going to give it the name that the file had, and then it's going to add what file type it was. So it puts _F CQP, and then it says .gpf. So you actually know what was converted. And that's helpful because if you start having a problem with the file and it was converted from a QLI, we're immediately able to notice that it was a QLI file that was imported. But to get these into that folder that import folder that I created, I would just hit multi again, click on both of them, and then hit copy, and then go back to the folder I want them in and hit paste, and I am ready to go. Okay, so that shows you how to do import one file, a single file. We actually just have to select them now, so that's very, very easy. And if you're doing multiple files, you do them by either copying them if they're all GPFs. If you have some that aren't GPFs, you'll need to do a batch import on them, but it's not hard. It's just remembering to go to the patterns batch folder and grab them later. Now, All of this assumes that when you did your original copying onto the drive, that you were using files that were not zipped. So if you had if you were on a Mac and you downloaded it and you copied that zip file over like I told you to, on your Surface, you're going to have the file menu at the bottom, right? File Explorer, and you're going to want to unzip them here. Okay, so same idea where you go into that zip file. In this case, it would be on your H drive, and grab your GPFs or the files that you want to import, and then pull them back onto the root of your H drive instead of being in a folder, right? So you would just highlight what you wanted. So if I wanted the CQP, and pull it onto the name of my drive. And that'll pull it outside of that zip folder. Quilt Path cannot see inside of a zip folder. So you won't see the folder at all because it can't see inside of them. So if you're looking for something and it's on your flash drive and you can see it and you know it's there, but Quilt Path can't see it, it's probably still zipped and you need to pull the files out of the zip to be able to use them. Or extract. If you hit extract all, it will extract everything for you as well. Which, both good and bad, right? If you extract all, you have a lot of files you probably aren't going to need sitting on that zip on your thumb drive that you'll then need to clean off eventually. But yeah, so just know that you have to unzip them to be able to use them. Other than that, getting files onto the system is super easy. I really hope that you enjoyed this quick tutorial and that it helps you. If you have further questions about Quilt Path, please check out my website, which is threadwaggle.com. I have a tab for Quilt Path that has a bunch of information. I also teach online classes on Quilt Path that I do through Vimeo, and I'm going to continue doing more videos like this as well. So I hope you guys are having a nice day, and happy quilting.